This is TABcast, brought to you by the Alternative Board,
helping business leaders improve their business for a better life. Hello and welcome to TABcast, episode 3. Who thought we'd get this far? We're really fortunate today that we've got 4 local business leaders with us who all come from very different sectors, but all have an amazing story to share. At the Alternative Board, we get to meet plenty of business owners who are involved in family businesses, and 4 of you have kindly come along today to share a little bit of your story. TABcast is all about no-nonsense business talk from real, honest, hard-working business leaders. So thank you from me and Simon to coming along today. We hope you enjoy the next 45 minutes, and let's get into things. A quick introduction, let's start with that. James, tell us a little bit about Certus and what you do, and who's involved from a family perspective in the business.
So I'm James Gorton, Certus Construction Services. So we supply, obviously, construction services to local authorities, local councils, housing associations. We work with them delivering their sort of void programmes, which are empty homes, refurbishing them back to a standard for new tenants and new clients. We do a lot of kitchen replacement schemes, bathroom replacement schemes, and we work in the insurance reinstatement sector. So following fires, floods, storm damage, we sort of go in and get policyholders sorted and back to where they should be. It's a family business. It's my dad's business. He formed it seven and a half years ago. So he was a board member at a housing association. He had a midlife crisis, so
we all have them.
Yeah. And then he quit his job and started a construction business. I joined it 2 years ago. My other brother Andrew is also a director there. He joined the business 5 years ago.
Thanks for coming, James. Rach, tell us a little bit about Ammo Group.
So Ammo was originally founded in 1989. Obviously, it's a family-run business, and it was founded by my dad. And we do external shading, outdoor living, and security solutions. So awnings, pergolas, verandas, roller shutters, and garage doors.
And tell us who else is involved in the business from a family perspective. We have to give her a shout out.
So we have to give a shout out to Abby. Yeah, so Abby's my daughter. My eldest daughter, she has been involved now almost 3 years. Actually, yes, coming up to her 3rd year, so being involved. So, and my mum still comes in 1 day a week, so to make sure that we're all behaving.
So it's just 4 days of the week when you're not behaving.
Yeah. In fact, no, we don't. We just don't behave.
Lee, tell us a little bit about who's involved in your business.
So I'm Managing Director of Advanced Electrical Services in Ossett. We're an industrial electrical contracting company that work nationwide. It was formed in 1986. I've worked there for coming up to 30 years now. It didn't start off as a family business. I bought the business from the founder.
Yeah.
However, I work with my wife, and she's worked in the business for well over 10 years, and I've worked with my brother for probably about 25 years. So yeah, we're really busy. It's not always easy working with family, but
that's why we're here. We want to understand why.
Yeah, completely.
But yeah, no, that's we know at the Alternative Board, we get to meet families, and it is an emotional roller coaster all the time, and that's really what we would just want to understand a little bit today about what are the highs like, what are the lows like, how do you come together. That leads us on to 3rd generation business. Jack, tell us a little bit about your business.
5th generation.
5th generation.
5th generation.
So I only know 2.
Wow.
Yeah, we've been running since 1920. More now that butcher shops have shut down all over the country. At the minute, there's probably 2 a week shutting down. It's just not a massive business anymore for people to run. So when the whole side of things started shutting down, we had to change and adapt in different ways. My dad took over at 40-year-old, and he had vision to run it and take it on after his dad, but never pushed it on as much as he should have done.
And I guess that's one of the first questions I want to ask you, Rachel, and James is, for you, were you always destined to follow in?
No, Dad never pushed me into it. I've got 2 brothers as well, 2 sisters. Dad never pushed me into the business. He said, you can go earn more money with your head than you can your hands.
James, always a path for you to go in the world of construction and follow your dad?
Yeah, not really, but from the outsider sort of looking in, people would like assume that there was. My dad started the business 7 years ago, and I think he'd always wanted to start a construction business. So he like I said, it was a bit of a surprise when he jacked it all in, and all of a sudden registering on company's house, and that's it, we're going. But we separately, the boys sort of separately went away and studied construction. So I was a quantity surveyor for 10 years. Andrew went away and worked within construction, and then he got his experience and he'd come back. Daniel, the other brother, got a building surveying degree and he did some work. So I suppose, weirdly, we were destined, but it was never a plan, really, in terms of we're all going to go away and study and get the experience and come back and join a family business. But it sort of worked out okay.
But where do you think Martin's thought process of moving away from PAYE, which we've all done, was shaped by you and Andrew's decision to go into construction?
Yeah, I think we've always been around it, you see. We've always been around construction growing up. So we built his own house. My dad built his own house when we were young, and when I mean built it, he put the shell up, and we were up there on a weekend sort of working away, cheap labour and all the rest, and around it. So yeah, I suppose you do just naturally follow your parents' sort of footsteps, and I think we were around it as kids. We saw that my dad was successful in his previous career, and we just naturally fell into it, and it worked. Like I say, all from the outside looking in, they always say to my dad, "Well, he's a QS, he's a building surveyor, he's got 7 years' experience at a contractor." It was this sort of the plan, and it weren't really. It was never really the plan, but yeah.
Great stuff. Rach, tell us a little bit about your involvement at AMO and how it came about.
Not until, unfortunately, after we lost my dad. So I never actually got the chance to work with him. Although, obviously, it was their business, and so it was always there to me.
Yeah.
I was always going to the unit and doing things, and he had me making shutters when I was this high, and
I know a little bit, of course, about you grieving for your dad and losing your dad. Was that a real difficult or straightforward decision for you to make in terms of, now becoming owner of AMO?
I was a childminder at the time as well, so completely different.
And as we've just been talking about, being a business owner is being a bit like a childminder as well.
Yeah, so completely exactly the same. Once it kind of was brought up, my mum wanted to take a bit of a step back. So it was like just a bit of a natural thing, really. And it's just been amazing that I've been able to carry on Dad's legacy.
Yeah.
It's like hugely important to me now.
And how easy then was it to have that discussion with Abby and bring Abby into the business?
She, again, Abby was doing something completely different. She was ECA for the ambulance.
Okay.
So she drove the ambulance and was a paramedic assistant. Let me come and work for you. And I was like, no, just no. I've got a really good relationship with Abby. And it was very scary that was going to... hang on a minute, we could have some fallouts here.
We're going to pick up on them fallouts. We're going to pick up on them fallouts.
And I was quite against it. And one of the other members of staff, Will, said to me, "You're missing out here, really. There's a chance here for you to be able to carry on the legacy and for it to go into the third generation."
So how did them discussions go with Abby in terms of, look, let's see if we can do this together?
So she created herself a little pros and cons list.
Yeah,
Do you do that, James? A little pros and cons list of where no, you?
No. I do with doing stuff for myself, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what she did. She created herself a little pros and cons, and I kind of said, look, you need to decide, really. She went to family, she went to friends and had the discussion with them, and I kind of left it to her, really, to make that final decision, because I didn't want it being thrown back in my face.
Lee, what's the pros and cons of working with your partner? I know you're not a second generational business, but you have your partner in the business.
I think you end up taking your work home with you, don't you? That's the number one problem. So I think it's important to try not to do that as much as possible. And I think the more you do, the more you work with each other, you have to set off really with some pretty basic, like, ground rules, I would say. and even then you'll break them.
Yeah.
But although we work together, we don't necessarily spend. We're both busy doing different things in different parts of the business.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't always get a chance to talk to each other during the working day, even though we're working in the same building.
Yeah.
So inevitably, sometimes you come home, and there is times where I'll say, "Geez, do we have to talk about this now?" You know, it's generally me that, you know, Jolene, my wife, bless her, she'll say, "Look, Lee, when I really need to talk to you about this, I've not had a chance to catch you all day." I'm like, "Oh God, right, clear." So
Why do you automatically think that's a negative thing to have a conversation?
because even though it's my business or our business, should I say, and I've worked there since I left school, and it's really important to me. I understand the importance of having a little bit of time away where I'm not thinking about work, because probably like everybody else sat on this sofa now, it's the first thing I think about in the morning. It's the last thing I think about when I go to bed. You know, if you've got a business for yourself, you're gonna have sleepless nights. You're gonna have a lot of worry at times. When it's good, it's great, but when it's bad, it's bloody awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you've tried to compartmentalise a little bit, I think that certainly helps.
I think as business leaders, we can always recognise of that, you know, sleepless nights, worry, you know, first thing on your mind in the morning, last thing at night, first thing you're thinking about is your business. But that must be even more enhanced when actually the people are the closest to you.
Yeah.
You know, it really must be. So I always describe, you know, running a business and a family business as a little bit of an emotional roller coaster.
A lot of them.
Yeah, a lot, yeah. And like, you know, Lee, you're saying you're working with your wife, thing like that. And I always look at that and I think, well, if I'm working with my wife, when we get home, we put the kids to bed, what are we going to talk about? My wife's literally just come into the business a little bit. So
right.
she's just started to do the admin for me and help out. She's always been in the background pushing me and driving it and saying, yeah, you can do this, you can do that. But as the business has grown, we've just brought her on board a couple of days a week doing the admin side of things for me. And she's loving it now. She's in the office. She's like getting away, and she's getting away from the kids, which is like the main thing. She's been a 24/7 mum for the last few years, and you know.
One of the things I'm keen to understand is, you know, whether you're a QS, whether you're a teacher, whether you started your path in a different direction, what was the biggest surprise for you working in a family business, James?
Yeah, difficult really, because the thing is that I was sort of involved with it from day one, but not involved with it. So nothing surprised me as such. I think the main thing that surprised me is the longer that you do it, the easier it gets. Is what I would say. I think when you first go into it, you have those thoughts of, oh my God, this is not exactly where I thought it was. This is not as easy in terms of like winning the work and the rest of it. But the longer that you work at it, the sort of easier things get.
Great stuff. Biggest surprise for you when, you know, obviously it was a major life event for you, Rach. Biggest surprise in the first couple of years?
Just how bloody hard it is. Literally. No, I don't think anybody can ever prepare you for running your own business. Yeah. It is
full on.
Full
on.
Like you said, the sleepless night. Like you say, when it's good, it's great. But when it's bad, it's all down to you. And then that extra responsibility now for me is it's my daughter's living. It's my daughter's.
We all know it's hard. So why do we get up in the morning and come back to it day in, day out? Why? Why do we do it?
Because you love it.
Because there is that passion deep down inside.
Yeah.
There has to be that passion, because if there isn't, there's no point. You need to go and find something else. You have to have that like burning passion to actually go and it is. Ammo is my life.
And you're proud of what you're selling.
And,
if you're proud of what you're selling, you're good for it.
Yeah, and it is, for me, it's the legacy. It's massively the legacy.
Right, okay.
You know, it's huge, is that for me.
What?
A little too hard sometimes, because he was a really good bloke, was my dad, so I've had some pretty hard shoes to fill.
And do you think you're filling them?
I'd like to think so.
I think you are. Lee, just want to pick up again, partners in the business, etc. What is that like on a a day-to-day basis. And I guess what I'm trying to pick out there is, you know, we get to meet lots of business owners where their partners are involved in businesses. You can have disagreements in work, you can have disagreements in life. How do you go about kind of separating them two things? You know, you might have one thing that you want to do in your business, but likewise, you know, you might fall out outside of work.
So I'm quite lucky that, you know, my wife is my best friend. And we, yeah, I know, yeah, getting soppy. But as far as mutual respect goes, we have very different, sometimes different views on things, on how we believe something should be done. But I think it's important to listen to each other and not understand that the other person, we all want the same thing, and that's for the business to succeed. And it's really important to understand and appreciate and surround yourself with people, not just your family, but outside of your family. I think it's really important to do that as well, to have people that you can lean on, whose opinions you really value. And if you're working with a family member whose opinion you don't really value, well, you're probably not going to have a family business for right long.
Interesting.
So I think it's mutual respect and an understanding, and try to swallow your pride sometimes and accept that other people's points of view might be better than your own.
Yeah.
We have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. So I'm from an engineering background, and probably from a business development point of view, my wife is definitely better at organising, better at systems, better at control.
That's what I'm going to say. Do you complement each other?
Yeah. Her strengths are certainly my weaknesses. In my line of work, it's heavily paperwork, admin, financial control based, and she's brilliant at all of that type of stuff. Which then means that I can concentrate on engineering type stuff. Clearly, there are crossovers. You know, if you talk, the hardest thing of it all, the hardest part of running a family business, I personally think, is employees. Mm-hmm. If we do have a slight difference of opinion, it's how we should deal with issues around running a business. Is dead easy until you start employing people.
Yeah.
And when you start employing people, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm generally quite lenient, and my wife appreciates that we're today's privileges are tomorrow's rights kind of thing. So whatever we do for one person, just take a view that you have to do it for everybody else, and whatever decision you make now will be open to scrutiny. And that's probably where we we have disagreements more. She's very more down
Stern,
the middle,
really,
stern than I
yeah.
am. And I get it. We have to be as a business. You can't, there has to be rules, and you have to think that whatever I do today, I have to do really forever and more, otherwise it'll be thrown in my face.
Yeah.
You did it for Joe, why can't you do it for me, kind of thing.
And how did you find when you started employing people to come into that fold between what you...
So I work with my brother. I work with my brother as well, and that's hard. That can be hard.
Yeah.
You know, I up Carl, my brother. He's both of us. We've had things going on at work recently that have been really difficult for us both, which I won't go into now. But working with my brother has possibly been harder than working with my wife, if you know what I mean, because we're both of us personalities are very similar in some areas and very different in others.
Conflict. We've just opened the door here into a little bit of conflict, and I don't mean conflict in terms of conflict resolution. Let's talk about someone new, fresh, new generation comes into the business. You know, how do you go about convincing the previous generation that your ideas, your thoughts, your vision for the business is a way forward, James?
I think we don't struggle. We do okay, but we are really close, and we tighten it around the strategy and the vision and everything like that. And hats off to my dad that he's open to what sort of his lads a saying, and he takes things on board, even though he's got.
Even if there's an element of doubt in his head.
No, I think he's pretty good at it. He is. I mean, don't get me wrong. When it goes wrong, he sort of lets you know that it weren't his idea in the first place. But he does take things on board. He understands that it's coming from, the younger generation, and sometimes you don't necessarily understand the reasons that we want to do things, but he takes it on board and he has a go, and he's quite open with it. So we're okay on that side of things. We're good. I think that what we've seen as a business, it's not the discussion, the conflict between sort of myself and Andrew and Martin, my dad. It's the fact that we've grown to a stage now where we're bringing in a layer of management that sort of works with us all.
Yeah.
And it's about aligning everybody, because we sit in the pub and we thrash things out, and we don't talk to each other for 10 minutes, then we start talking again and all the rest of it, and eventually you get to where you need to get to.
Yeah.
But it's about having that management team around you and getting everybody bought into it.
It's getting everybody on board. You've got to treat your team and your employees, and you've got to make them part of your family.
Because you can't. I can't speak to. We've got a couple of supervisors. You can't speak to like Paul, the supervisor, the way I speak to our kid after 2 pints when we're talking about work. You can't, because it's just not gonna. But so I was interested to find out how you sort of went through that process of bringing people into that level of management in terms of family members and people around you also making sort of business strategy decisions together. Yeah.
I think that the most important thing with family in the business is that I don't think anybody could accuse any of us of not being pretty good at his job.
Yeah.
So we've got the respect of us peers straight away. So I think it'd be really important if, I've got 2 daughters, if one of them did want to come into the business, it would be really important that they start at the bottom and they work their way up and they understand the business inside out before I just thrust them and said, "Hey, there you go, you're a manager. Drive around in a fancy car, I'll pay you loads of money." That won't end well.
Yes.
I don't think, because
Maybe wouldn't start well either.
well, yeah. I mean, I mean, there's family-run business are littered with a generation that's come in that's never had to really work for it, that's been handed everything. And how do you mitigate that? You mitigate by starting off at the bottom, understand your trade, understand the business, but more importantly, earn the respect of your colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that,
But
you
how
won't manage anybody.
it was interesting listening to James there, and I'm keen to come to you, Jack, about almost the previous generation letting you off the leash, letting you try new things, but keeping a watching brief.
Oh yeah.
You've made a lot of changes to your business. You've elevated it to a different level. You kind of changed the concept of what it means going to a butcher. I guess I'm trying to understand, what resistance did you get, and how did you overcome that?
So to go back to the actual question was, how did you integrate? How did you work in? And my answer was, give your dad a P45. I've sacked him. He's thrown his apron at me in front of customers, might I add. We got to the point where we were arguing a lot in work. I was really wanting to drive the business forward, and he was, no, don't do that. And one of the massive things came down to money, and it wasn't money in wages. It was money in me wanting to drive the business forward.
You mean that level of investment?
The level of investment, yeah. But, we need to do this, we need to do that. But the biggest breaking point for me was with my dad, and he's 70 now. I've retired him 3 years ago. He should have been retired at, 64, something like that. But it got to the point with Dad where we were arguing so much all the time, and I'd go home and I'd say to wife, I hate him. And we'd had our daughter at this point. And at one point I said, I don't want him to see Hendrix. And at that point, I walked round to my dad's house and I said, Dad, we're going to have to do something. I said, I never, ever want to say those words again.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to say, I don't want you to see my daughter because of the way we've fallen out of work.
Yeah.
Wow.
And since he sort of took a massive back seat from the business, we've come on like amazing. We don't have those conversations, we don't have that, and it works. He still comes in, he still comes in and he tells me, you should be doing it like that, you should be doing it like that. But it's a really old school way of thinking, but I still take it on board.
Yeah, you have to do.
Yeah,
He's
he's done it.
I have arguments so many times with my mum.
Yeah.
You have to actually
But
listen to what they say.
He's been there since he was 6 years old, and he's run the business, and he's done really, really well. You know, he helped his dad and his uncle, and he's done really well. And my thing was that I wanted to be better than him. I wanted to grow the business better than him. Not that he'd done anything wrong. You know, he'd done everything right, but I still wanted to be better than him.
Yeah.
The founder of AES, although he's not my daddy, I had a very close relationship with him. He was almost like my dad, really, as far as work. And it got to and he gave me the opportunity to buy the business. Obviously, it was good for him and it was good for me.
Yeah.
But I can relate to what you mean about the investment part. We got to a stage where I was wanting to invest into the business, but he was wanting to take stuff out, mainly because he was looking at retirement. And God, it were hard. I wouldn't say argued, because he weren't my dad. I always had that respect for him.
Yeah.
But it was unbelievably frustrating for me.
Well,
really tough to go through.
My dad and my granddad were the same. They were like, you don't borrow money. To this day, my granddad, you don't borrow money. And I said, you need to do to be able to invest.
Yeah.
You know, it was a different one for us.
That's a different generational thinking, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is.
I mean, it's a great quality to have. It's a great voice to have, and nagging it back of your head, though, isn't it? To only, if you do want to borrow money, only borrow it because you really want to, and be really careful.
Yeah, that's just it.
And be very clear on what you're going to use it for.
Exactly,
when I told my dad we were doing the shop out and how much it was going to cost, no, you can't do that. And I said, I'm 30 years old. I said, if it doesn't work, I've got 35 years to pay it off. I said, but I know that it's going to work.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we're just taking on the second shop. And he's like, Jack, you're doing too much, you can't do it. I said, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it.
Yeah.
It's that risk versus reward equation again, isn't it? And sharing that visioning. I wonder when this generation's going to retire the previous generation. Have you and Andrew had any conversations about Dad's future?
Yes, away from him we have, yeah. But no.
Sorry, Martin.
No, I think I'm in a slightly sort of different position in terms of a family business, because it's not, although it is one generation working with the other. Like, my dad formed the business 7 years ago. He did 3 or 4 years of hard graft, and then we joined. So we're sort of on the growth trajectory as a new business together.
Yeah.
So we're making those decisions, we're all on board, and we're going on the journey together. I think when you start thinking that's passing to the next generation, and we've been doing it 35 years, that's when those difficult situations can arise. But no, I think these people, when you form a business and you run it for a lot of years, unfortunately you're just the sort of person that will probably never retire. And they'll be involved in some way or another, just in it and on it. I think my dad recognises that once he's getting in the way, he's going to try and get out the way as such. But at the minute, he's well and truly, as much as I don't like to tell him too much, he's quite an asset to the business.
Well, yeah.
So as soon as he
stops becoming, that continue.
As soon as that stops becoming, I think he'll recognise it himself. He'll always be involved in some way or another, on it or in it, or doing something,
or just take a wage out of it.
Yeah, something. And then, but yeah. So there's, at the minute we're together on growth. So it's not really on his radars at the minute.
What's the biggest lesson that you learned from the previous generation? We've talked a little bit there about their lack of appetite for risk around investment, but what advice did you get? What lessons did you learn from the previous generation? And even, I know you say about non-family when you bought the business.
For me personally, it was really the values about. It was understanding and being really clear on what your values are and what's important to you, and always defending them quite robustly. Everything is we're always taught to be really straight with people, not to rip people off.
Yeah.
But it's okay to find value in what you do and charge people accordingly. There's a difference there.
Yeah.
I think it's okay not, so I'm really clear. I'm not not cheap. We're not cheap as a contracting company. If anybody approaches us and says, I want this job doing, I've got a really tight budget. If they're saying, well, if you're looking to cut corners and save a bit of money,
we're not the business for you.
We're not for you. We can offer you really good value, but really good value and cheap are generally not the two.
Same,
they're not the same.
No,
So I think it would just really, really, just really simple, not complex. I'm not reinventing the wheel here by saying stuff like that, but by always sticking to them all the time.
What's the biggest lesson you learned from Don?
Hard work. Like, Dad took the business over when he was 42. He just had me, really. They were trying to move house. I don't know what they were doing at the time, can't remember. And the story he told me was that the boiler broke and they had nothing. He'd put all his money, all his savings into the business to buy it off his uncle and his dad. And they had nothing at the time. And all he did was hard work. And all I remember Dad is working.
Biggest business lesson you learned from your dad?
Never take it home. It was one for you keep it at work. Never, and there's a cut off. You walk through the door and you're at home, and it was Dad at home, and he never brought it home with him.
I need to learn that.
And
that's a big. It's a big
massive thing.
emotional thing,
very
isn't it?
hard to do.
It is.
Very hard to do, and very and always family and health always came first for him, always, no matter what.
Yeah.
And that then goes down now through me and then through my staff as well. Your family always has to come first, and never compromise on quality.
Yeah. No. Biggest lesson you've learned off Martin?
Yeah, he's. I think what he tries to drive as a family sort of business, he likes to celebrate the wins, because I think he recognises that it's hard work every day, sort of doing what we do, and sometimes you can just these little wins can just go by and before
unnoticed.
So he tries to drive into us like that next when we get a contract or feedback or whatever, let's celebrate it together and recognise that it's a big time in what we're trying to do. It's the next new client or whatever. Let's take a bit of time away. Let's celebrate it together. So I think that's a big, it's a big driver of what he sort of has. Yeah.
I think it's also recognising a little bit of the losses as well, and things don't always go our way.
Yeah.
So just taking that little bit of time to reflect on why that is and what we can learn from that.
And it doesn't need to be much, does it? If you've had a good week at work, if it's let's go for that beer on a Friday night and just deflate and chat about the fact that that's gone well or better than we thought and move on to the next.
That's a really interesting word, isn't it? Of deflation, not inflation in terms of finances, but how you as an individual deflate and just decompress. And get that time away just to be yourself again. Yeah. How do you do that? We talked about a beer. How do you, as business owners in a highly charged emotional environment, how do you learn to escape?
You don't.
Yeah, it's challenging.
You literally, my wife has to force me. She has to force me to take a day off.
How do you get away from it, Rach?
I don't know. I'm quite good at it, to be fair. Abby will probably tell you. I always take Fridays off if I can.
Good.
And that's something I think that's come down from my dad. Like I said, your health and family have always got to come first. And if
looking after yourself.
Yeah, you've got to look after yourself, because if you're not on form, you're not doing anybody any good.
I think as you get older, though, you realise that, don't you?
Yeah.
So if you're in your 30s, if you're not driven at that age, you should be driven. If you own a business, you should be driven all the time. But
yeah.
If you're young enough, if you're lucky enough to be in your 30s and you're working for yourself, that is like, if you're not going to do it now, you'll never do it.
No, that's it.
I think I know the answer to this question, Lee, but what do you do to deflate?
So I have a young family. So I want to start off by saying that my family is the most important thing to me. However, I am the best version of myself when I'm able to decompress, and I've found that open water swimming helps me best to do that. I have a very obsessive personality, which is brilliant for work, but I have to try to focus. I have to try to find things to obsess about outside of work, which are healthy obsessions.
Well, from all of us, we wish you all the very best on your next venture.
Yeah.
And doing that. I want to finish off with one final question. What advice for all of the hundreds of thousands of listeners out there listening to TABcast today and seeing you online? You know, by the time this goes out, I think we'll be on 250,000 views. Somebody out there will be thinking about starting or getting involved with a family business, either them and their siblings or bringing their next generation in. What's the one piece of advice you would give that business owner who is thinking of about in some way getting into this emotional roller coaster of a family business? You'd like to go?
Do it. Absolutely.
Why?
Just the passion, the drive, the just the buzz that you get from it.
Yeah.
I think that's, if you get that, like I said before,
If you start in it and don't get that
if you
vibe,
don't get that, then
you know, you
get
can
out.
try it and get out.
Yeah.
But if you start in it and you say, yeah, I can do this, I can take this to the next level, I can carry it on, go for it, surely. If you do it and try it, at least try it. You know,
Yeah.
Working
Yeah,
with
at least
family,
give it
like
a
I
go.
said,
Give it a
everyone's
go.
had a different bit.
What's stopping you? James?
I think when it turns out well, it's great. I mean, I think everybody involved in our business and the family, they just love it every single day, and there's minimal sort of issues between each other. They get resolved pretty quickly. But I would say that if you're thinking about it, make sure you're up for it. It makes you up for the challenge, and make sure that whoever you're potentially going into business is also up for it, because obviously relationships, there's horror stories out there of relationships sort of being fractured around businesses. So
Resolve differences early. Don't let them linger.
Make sure that you're on
Yeah.
the same page in terms of the hard work that's required in running a business and growing a business. But if it goes well, it's absolutely fantastic, and I'd recommend it to anyone here.
Yeah.
Piece of advice for anyone thinking of getting
Probably
involved?
just have some pretty simple ground rules, really. So if you do that right from the off, and you know what the rules of engagement are, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's no confusion later on down the line. Invariably, it'll be when somebody wants to do something one way and they say, no, I want to do it a different way. If you can try and sort out how that's resolved sooner rather than later, I would say is really important.
So to summarise all of that from 4 great business leaders is, if you're thinking of starting a family business, just do it. Resolve your differences very, very early on. And early on in the partnership, be absolutely clear your expectations of each other.
Yeah.
My expectations of today was that I'd get to spend 45 minutes with 4 great business leaders. Thank you all for being involved in episode 3 of TABcast. From me, Liam Prendergast, my business partner, Simon Banks, James, Rachel, Lee, Jack, continue doing the great things that you're doing, and thanks for being part of TABcast. If you're a local business leader and you want to get involved in the next episode of TABcast, how easy was it? It was great fun, wasn't it?
Great.
It was great fun.
Easy.
Thank you all
Easy.
for tuning in. Isaac, many thanks for all your help and support. Podmatic, come down and see them. Like, share and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify.
Jack Binks, RH Binks and Sons Butchers. You can find us in East Ardsley and now Horbury soon to be. Website is www.rhbinksandsons.com. Find us on all social media platforms.
Yeah, James Gorton, Certus Construction Services. You can find us on LinkedIn and on the website as well, www.certuspm.co.uk.
Rachel Hudson, Ammo Group. You can find us on all social media platforms and on the website www.ammogroup.co.uk.
Lee Johnson, Advanced Electrical Services in Wakefield. You can find us on all socials, and our website is advancedelectricalservices.org.uk.